So in this short lesson, we will be going over this piece of equipment which is present in all the heart rooms as well as Carbon 17, 22 hybrid rooms and OR19. Now this specific monitor, as this panel indicates, is used for internal as well as external cardioversion, defibrillation and pacing. Its location is that it is situated and mounted on this IV pole under the infusion pumps that is present on the left side. This is again by standard present in all the heart rooms as well as Carbon 17, 22 and OR19. And in this specific situation, as you can see, that this is connected to two R2 pads that you can see in this graphic as well, and they are connected via cable to this port of the LifePak. And this is obvious. The patient is not in the room, so this is being done prior to bringing the patient to the room and induction. In order to safely and effectively use this piece of equipment in the heart rooms, it is important to be familiar with the instrument panel. And it's very simple and straightforward. Number one, right here, is the power button, which should be on and green all the time. This is the energy select button, and lastly is the charge button before you discharge it by pressing number 4 button here. Now it has certain other functions also that we normally do not use. That is the AED function, which means if you have the EKG leads on and you want to, Carioverter defibrillate, it analyzes the rhythm. It can be used as either a transcutaneous or an intravenous pacemaker mode also, which we normally do not use. When we can choose the rate and the current and whatever we want to choose as far as, trying to effectively pace the patient. Where we will spend most time is this specific panel, and that's the on, energy select, charge, and then finally discharge to defibrillate or Carioverter. Now the important aspect over here is to concentrate on this specific location. This is where either the transcutaneous pads are attached when we are going to be only using this in the transcutaneous mode to Carioverter to defibrillate, or the internal cardioversion paddles will be used that are employed when the chest is open, and the cardiac surgeons will be choosing to Carioverter defibrillate, and in that case we will go only as charging, selecting the energy, charging, and this specific function will be delegated to the person holding the internal cardioversion paddles, and they can directly do it on the field. Now, a few things to remember, specifically for energy select options. When we are using the transcutaneous R2 pads to Carioverter defibrillate, we can choose to increase the energy to its max over 300 joules per shock. But when the internal cardioversion paddles are connected at this location, in that situation, the upper limit of the energy is only 50 joules, and it would not go to 100 or 200 joules because you have direct contact with the heart, and therefore you need very little energy to Carioverter or defibrillate. That's an important point to remember. Then the next portion is the EKG signal, which is the most important function that we need to be aware of and be familiar with its display on the screen. So now let's go over the EKG display and synchronization training for this LifePak 20E monitor. So in the morning, when you turn on the monitor by pressing the on button, when the patient is not in the room, this is how this should look like, which means that the patient does not have there's no EKG signal display because nothing is connected to it. However, what can possibly happen is that if you do not attach the EKG synchronization cable or get the EKG directly from the patient onto the monitor, this is what it could look like even when the patient is in the room and is being monitored. That's because this specific port of the LifePak monitor is not connected to the EKG sync cable, either that one that is coming directly from the patient or a phonos cable, which is a slave cable that takes the signal from the Philips monitor that displays the patient vital signs and brings it into the LifePak monitor. And that is this specific location where these EKG sync cables are plugged into this LifePak monitor. And once you plug this cable into this monitor, this is what the signal should look like on the monitor, which means you have a clear display of the signal of the EKG rhythm of the patient onto this LifePak monitor. Now, why this is important? This is important because display of signal, as is happening in this specific location, is different from display as well as recognition of the R waves. This is being done in this specific fashion, that is, display of these inverted triangles on the R wave is another level of recognition of the EKG signal, which means in this specific case the EKG is being displayed, and in this case the R waves are being recognized to prevent accidental shocking of patient in when you press the synchronization cable, or to prevent an RNT phenomena to convert a stable into an unstable rhythm. So therefore, displaying the EKG on the monitor and syncing the EKG on the monitor are two different things. For example, in this case, as you can see, that there are EKG complexes being demonstrated, but there is no inverted triangle, and that's because this specific button, sync, has not been pressed. And when in real life, when that happens, this is what it is. This is what it looks like, and that is that there are not only EKG signal being displayed onto the screen, but there are also inverted triangles on the R waves, and that's when the patient signal has been brought into the system, either via direct skin leads or the phono slave cable that we use by default in our operating rooms, and that is connected to this specific location on the LifePak monitor, so that when the patient is ready for synchronized cardioversion, this is what exactly the display should look like, which is a very safe and optimal position, which means the patient is connected to the monitor is turned on, the EKG signal is being captured, and also you have pressed the synchronized button so that now you can safely cardiovert the patient by preventing an RNT phenomena. Whereas R2 pads can be applied to any patient who has a high risk of arrhythmia requiring cardioversion or defibrillation before, during, and after induction, but there are certain absolute indications of applications of these transcutaneous pads. The first and the foremost is redo cardiac surgery or redo sternotomy for any reason. This is because there's limited access to the heart, and during dissection in and around the heart, if there's an arrhythmia, there is limited access to the sides of the heart for application of internal cardioversion paddles. So therefore, redo cardiac surgery is an absolute indication, as is minimally invasive cardiac surgery in situations when the heart is being exposed through thoracotomy left or right, and therefore internal cardioversion paddles cannot be applied. Another very important indication is patients undergoing pericardiectomy when electrical bovie is being used in direct contact with the myocardium, leading to a higher risk of arrhythmias, as is pericardial effusion drainage, and drainage of chronic effusions can also be very hazardous, and patients are particularly prone to arrhythmias when pericardium is open or electrocautery is used during that. So for as long as in situations like this, when the heart is not fully exposed, when the R2 pads have been applied, they are the ones that should be connected to the LifePak 20E. And when the heart is completely exposed, and this thing is confirmed the cardiac surgical team that now internal cardioversion paddles can be applied, that the external pads should be discontinued, and the internal cardioversion paddles, the cable that is dropped from the field, should be taken and then connected to the LifePak, just in case the patient requires emergency cardioversion or defibrillation. So this is, again, a very important communication that happens between the cardiac anesthesia and the cardiac surgical team. So in conclusion, the LifePak is a critical piece of equipment in the heart rooms. It is used either electively or emergently to cardiovert or defibrillate patients. When working as a resident or a fellow in the heart rooms, it is a part of your room setup and responsibility to ensure that this LifePak, number one, is present, and number two, it is functional. Functionality implies ensuring that it is connected to the power and can be switched on. You should also know how to either slave the EKG signal from the main monitor to the LifePak or use directly applicable skin leads to get the EKG signal from the patient into the LifePak monitor. You should know how to connect the R2 pads to this LifePak monitor, and also have the skills to connect the internal cardioversion paddles, which are dropped by the cardiac surgical team once the chest is open and the heart is completely exposed. You should have the ability to select the energy, change the energy level, and use the shock button to either cardiovert or defibrillate when the skin pads are being used, or to select the energy and tell the cardiac surgical team to use the cardioversion paddles to cardiovert or defibrillate the patient. This is practical nuts and bolts of the LifePak monitor, and I hope you enjoy this session. Thank you.